Hello, world history students, and welcome to our video series over the different aspects of civilizations. This should be the first unit and the first video that you are watching, so I hope that you enjoy it. We're going to start today with migration, and we are going to understand that with migration, we start to see humans emerge about 200,000 to 100,000 years ago. Not really sure on the exact time because before this time period, we really don't have a whole lot of written records, so this is when we start to see the first archaeological evidence of human beings, and we begin to see those in Africa. Alright, so these first human beings were hunters and foragers, which meant basically that they would hunt for food and they would try and find the different foods that they would have. The problem with that is that they had to move with their food and water supply, so if the animals migrated, they had to migrate as well. Also, if the rivers changed or different water sources changed, they would have to migrate to find the different water sources. We also did see what's called an ice age occur, which was a global cooling as the temperatures dropped for those individuals. And when that happened, it actually created a land bridge between modern-day Russia and Alaska. And so that actually allowed animals to first kind of come from what is now modern-day Russia and Siberia and move over into the Americas up into Canada. And the humans would then follow those animals. As the temperature then rose, that land bridge melted, and those humans and animals became the first Americans. So that's kind of a fun fact. So by about 10,000 BCE, we start to see that humans are on all continents of the world except Antarctica, and we still see that today. There's no human life on Antarctica other than scientists, and it is not an inhabited area. So that is how kind of migration began, and that is where we start our history. We then move into the Paleolithic period. So the Paleolithic period is about 2 million to 8,000 BCE. So long time ago. All right, so we see the Stone Age occur, where stone tools began to be used. Before, humans would have to use just their hands or other tools. Now, instead, they're able to use stones. So as you can see in the picture, we start to see things such as arrows start to be formed that could be kind of woven onto sticks and be used as spears. We also see rocks being used to grind grain, and we also would see wood, bones, antlers, basically anything they could find that was more sturdy than their hands were used as tools. These human beings also began to learn how to control fire. So they used that fire for light, for heat, for protection, and it also would actually scare animals. So they would chase after animals holding a stick on fire, and the animals would run off cliffs and fall to their death. So they literally scared them to death. So, sorry about you, early animals. We also see them start to use fire to kind of prepare food. So we start the first cooking and preparing of food instead of eating things raw, which also helped with nutrition. We do also see some structures kind of evolve with the nuclear family and what's called their kinship group. So then we have the clan, which is the larger group of relatives, and then the tribe, which was multiple clans. So I kind of think of it as your class would be your kinship group, then the school that you attend would be your clan, and the entire EVSC then would be your tribe. So that's kind of how I like to think of it. So they had those social structures in place from very early on. Males at this time, they were mainly hunters and they were used for manual labor, whereas the females then would be foragers and they would go out and find the food. We also see religion occur, and we have what's called animism, which was essentially using those animals and rivers as kind of quasi-gods, and then shamans that could talk to those gods. So we also see music and art emerge with religion, and so art actually evolved first. We see our first modern, or not even modern, just art in general, about 32,000 years ago, and music occurs about 3,000 years ago. So then we move into the Neolithic Revolution, and the Neolithic Revolution began at about 8,000 CE or BCE. So we see this about 10,000 years ago. And there are several different kind of major developments, and those are the ones that are numbered that we're going to go through. The Neolithic Revolution is also called the Agricultural Revolution. So in order to have an agricultural revolution, we had to have agriculture, or learning how to grow crops. So this is when we first began to see how to grow crops. The people also became less nomadic, but it also caused less diversity in both their diets, in the plants, and kind of in the animals that were alive. So while we got to grow things, it actually limited their diets and caused them to have less nutrition than if they were just hunting and foraging for whatever they could find to eat. We also see pastoralism, which is number 2, which is a domestication of wild animals. So we start to see animals being used for either labor or food, and they kind of were created or used in those purposes. So the first animal that was ever domesticated actually was the dog, which is why dogs are the best animals ever created. So keep that in mind. Cats are awful. Unless you're in Egypt. Should qualify that. Then the second animals that we start to see goats, then cattle, horses, and sheep are all animals that are used for either labor or food. And we started to see this revolution begin in Africa and Eurasia, which is kind of the middle there in between Europe and Asia, and it kind of moved on from there and spread. We also see the specialization of labor. So because we had now the surplus of crops caused by the agricultural revolution, now we can have different jobs. Not everybody had to be a farmer, and we could take advantage of that with trade. So we also then begin to take records of this trade, and that is where we transition from prehistory to history. So that's kind of fun and exciting. So moving on. Now we have the growth of villages and cities. Okay, so tribes began to abandon that nomadic lifestyle, and they started to create cities. So now if you didn't want to be a farmer, you didn't have to be, but you had to live somewhere that was close to the farms, so you could still get food from them. So we see those cities begin to emerge. We also see governments emerge because governments were needed to coordinate the farming. Somebody had to oversee it and protect the food sources. So the people that owned the most land were oftentimes the most wealthy. And as it is even in today, the more wealthy you are, the more powerful you are. Next, we have religion. We already talked about it a little bit with animism, but now we start to see these farmers creating rituals to the spirits. And because of that, they became more permanent. And with more permanent civilizations and more permanent ceremonies, we need people to lead those. And that's where we have our priests start to emerge and our other religious leaders. And then finally, we have technological innovations. So those innovations were kind of made through trade or war or contact with other civilizations. And so we actually start to see things occur that now are being spread from one civilization to another. So things like clay pots, the plow, wheels, spinning wheels for textiles, and the metallurgy, or creating metal to use as tools. We start to see that as well. So where do we see these first civilizations? The first civilizations that we see are kind of here on the map. So we see Mesopotamia, and Mesopotamia is located in modern-day Iraq and Syria. We'll study that first. Then we go into Egypt, which is right there along the Nile. You'll notice all of these civilizations are all along a river source. So Egypt is located in northern Africa by the Nile River. Then we see in China, in the Honghe River region, also known as the Shang China area. So we see that the Yellow River civilization of the Shang regions is the next place we'll go. And then finally, we'll finish up there in the Indus River region in modern-day India and Pakistan. We also do start to see societies in Mesoamerica, which we'll touch on briefly, and as well as the Andean region in South America with the Incas. So that's your first lesson. I know it was quick, but you can pause and stop and take notes as you need to. So hopefully this becomes easy for you and you guys can take notes at home, and we can continue on with our lesson. So the next video you guys will probably see will be over Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt. So have a great rest of your day, and we will see you guys next time.